Good morning, students. I hope you all are well. And this is once again your economics teacher Lakshmi Vyas with part 2 of the chapter Market Mechanism, that is, equilibrium price and quantity in a competitive market. In our first part, we have already discussed about equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity, equilibrium condition, disequilibrium, effects of change in demand, change in supply, and now I'm here to complete this chapter with the second half. In the second half, we'll start with the first topic, which is simultaneous changes, that means simultaneous shifts of demand and supply curve. In order to simplify our study, we have already discussed how equilibrium price and quantity will be affected with change in demand or supply, any one. But what happens usually when demand changes, supply also changes. Now, as a result, equilibrium price and quantity will change. Now, we know that when the demand and supply both increases, usually equilibrium quantity increases. With increase in demand also equilibrium quantity is increasing. With increase in supply also equilibrium quantity is increasing. But equilibrium price is not moving in the same direction. With demand we saw increase means increase in price, decrease means decrease in price. But with supply the condition is reverse. When supply increases, price falls. When supply decreases, price rises. Now, if both demand and supply will change in the same direction, whether price will increase or decrease, it will depend upon the magnitude, that means the value of change in demand or supply, which is more effective. Accordingly, price will change. Now, when demand and supply both changes, the word changes can be increase or decrease. It can happen that demand is increasing or supply is decreasing, or demand is decreasing and supply is increasing, or demand and supply both are increasing or both are decreasing. So there is possibility of many cases, and this is the most important part of the chapter from which usually 6 marks question will come. So first of all, you need to understand whether demand is increasing or supply is increasing with respect to the corresponding cause given. For example, if income is increasing, then demand will change. If technology is deteriorating or improving, then supply will change. So accordingly, first step is always to understand what is changing. Then in which direction, whether the change is positive or negative, accordingly you need to understand whether it will increase or decrease the demand or supply. Now, if there is simultaneous change, we can have many cases as I told you now. So, let's start our discussion with the very first and simple condition where demand and supply both are increasing. Okay? Accordingly, we will be able to understand when it will decrease, what will be the result, or when one will increase or one will decrease, what will be the result. Just in order to learn the process, to learn the method, we need to understand with one case. So let's take the first case, which is effects of simultaneous increase in demand and supply. That is, when demand will increase and supply will also increase. Now, when demand and supply both will increase, quantity will automatically increase because more demand and more supply, so quantity in the market will be more. But whether price will change in a positive direction or negative, that depends upon three conditions. The first condition is demand increases more than supply. Second is supply increases more than demand. And the third one is demand and supply both are increasing by equal amount. So let's discuss each one of them separately. So here is our first case. That is when demand increases more than supply. When the relative increase in demand is greater than relative increase in supply, then the result will be equilibrium price rise. Here we can see a diagram in which the initial demand curve DD and supply curve SS are intersecting at point E, and that E is the equilibrium, basic equilibrium we know. So at point E, the market price will be OP and quantity will be OQ. Now, demand and supply both increases means rightward shift. So demand increases, say here you can see that DD is shifting to D1, D1, and supply is also increasing. So SS shifting rightward to S1, S1. Now, from the diagram, it is very simple and clearly observing that shift of demand is more than shift of supply. When you will draw the diagram, you will also randomly take a larger gap between the two demand curves and a comparatively smaller gap between the two supply curve, and then you don't need to learn the result. Automatically you will get the new result. But there are 4 points of intersections in the diagram. You have to be very careful while selecting E1, which is a new equilibrium. How will you select? See, E1 is the point of intersection of D1 and S1. The new demand and the new supply curve is intersecting at point E1. So at E1, the new equilibrium will be selected, and at point E1, we can see the corresponding equilibrium price is OP1 and quantity is OQ1. So OP1 and OQ1 both are more than OP and OQ, means initial price and quantity are lower and the new price and quantity are larger. That means when demand and supply both increases and demand increases more than supply, then the result will be increase in equilibrium price as well as quantity. Is it clear? So let's move to the second case, and the second case is demand increases less than supply. That means here also demand will increase, supply will increase, but increase in supply will be more than that of demand. So see the diagram here. DD initial demand, SS initial supply, intersection point E will give you the equilibrium, and equilibrium price is P1, OP, and OQ is the equilibrium quantity. Same here, you will follow the same method. You will shift the demand curve to right, D1, D1, but a small gap. On the other hand, the gap between the new supply curve and the original supply curve, SS and S1, S1 is comparatively more. So the new supply curve and new demand curve is intersecting at point E1, and see, E1 is below E. That means quantity is increasing from Q0 to Q1, but price is decreasing from OP to OP1. And this is the difference in the two cases. In the previous case, price was increasing, and here price is decreasing. Just because the impact of supply is more, and we have seen that when supply increases only with constant demand, price falls. And this is what reflected over here as well, that when demand and supply both increases and increase in demand is less than supply or increase in supply is more than demand, then equilibrium quantity will increase but price will decrease. In the diagram also you can see the arrows which shows that quantity increases but price falls. So this is the second case. In the first case we saw price rise, in the second case we saw price fall. So what can be the third case? Yes, correct guess, it is constant price. So what happens when the demand and supply increases by equal magnitude? That means the shift of demand curve and shift of supply curve will be by equal amount. For example, 10% rise in demand and 10% rise in supply. In such cases, the equilibrium quantity will increase but price will remain same. Here in the diagram also you can see when the initial demand curve DD and initial supply curve SS are intersecting at point E, the equilibrium shows price OP and quantity OQ. Now, if the demand increases, then rightward shift of the demand curve from DD to D1, D1 with an arrow, rightward arrow, we can understand that, and a rightward shift of the supply curve as well from SS to S1, S1, which is an increase in supply. So new equilibrium is at E1, and we can see that at point E1 the quantity is OQ1 but price is again OP. This is just because demand and supply are increasing by same amount. So the question can come in other ways as well. Question can come, mention a situation when the simultaneous increase in demand and supply will lead to increase in price. Now, in such case, you have to say that a simultaneous increase in demand and supply will lead to an increase in price when demand increases more than supply. Secondly, in which situation of simultaneous increase in demand and supply the price will remain same? Then your answer will be, when demand and supply increases simultaneously, the price will remain constant if demand and supply increases by equal magnitude. I think it is the way you can understand it better. So, till now I have shown an increase in demand and supply simultaneously. Similar way you can understand a decrease in demand and supply simultaneously. It is your task to do that part. How will you do it? I can give you an idea. Just the way we have divided this increase in three cases, decrease will also be done in the same way of division. First will be decrease in demand more than supply, then demand curve will shift more toward the left and supply will shift less. Decrease in demand less than supply, supply will shift more and demand will shift left less. And equal decrease in demand and supply. I can tell you what results will you get in such cases. When demand decreases more, equilibrium price and quantity both will decrease. When demand decreases less than supply, that means when supply decreases more, then equilibrium price increases but quantity decreases. Price increases and quantity decreases when demand decreases less than supply. And third case, when demand and supply both decreases equally, then equilibrium quantity decreases but price remains the same. Draw diagrams and definitely you will get the same results. You don't need to mug up a situation with the corresponding result. You just need to draw the diagram properly and definitely you will get the correct result. You can do it and you can cross check with the answers which I have told you right now. After this, let's move to the next part and the last part of the chapter. That is application of tools of demand and supply. That means price control. Till now we have discussed how price is determined by demand and supply. And then if the demand and supply changes, what will be its effect? Now we are going to discuss that there are some situations when government needs to intervene. At times we can see that government fixes the price by law rather than allowing it to be determined by the market prices of demand and supply. Now we can here explain two cases of price fixation by the government and use the tools of demand and supply to discuss the implication of such fixation policies. The two cases which we are going to discuss are, number one, maximum price legislation or price ceiling, and minimum price legislation or price flooring, that is floor price, which is also known as rationing. So let's start the discussion of each one of them separately. The first one, maximum price legislation or price ceiling. Here we can understand with the name itself. Ceiling means the topmost layer of a house. And this is the upper roof. So it is the maximum legislation. So price ceiling means that maximum legal price which a supplier can charge for a particular commodity. Now, it is usually done for the betterment of consumers. We all see at the back of any product it is written MRP, that is maximum retail price. That means the upper limit of the price is given. In India, Usually, price ceiling is imposed on certain essential products like wheat, rice, kerosene oil, sugar, etc. So, price ceiling basically means the upper limit of the price which can be charged by any producer for any particular product. It is not done for all the commodities. Usually, for the basic necessities, it is done. Now, let's discuss its implications. First of all, the most important implication is its effect on price and quantity. Here you can see a diagram where the demand curve DD and supply curve SS are intersecting at point E and equilibrium price and quantities are OP0 and OQ0. Now, price ceiling. Now, if the government fixes the price at a point above equilibrium, for example P1, then in such cases what we can see is P1 is the maximum price that can be charged. So, if any producer charges price P1, then at that price there will be more supply and less demand, that is excess supply in the market. Now, whenever we see that there is an excess supply in the market, price decreases. Since it is the maximum price, producers can charge below it and automatically they will come lower and lower till P0. So, equilibrium will be reached back. So, no use of fixing a price above equilibrium. Now, in order to get a meaningful effect of this price ceiling, economy, that means government, must fix the price below equilibrium, that is P2. Because if P2 will be the highest price, no one can charge more than that. That means at a lower price, market demand will be more, but market supply will not be that much. That means producers are not willing to supply at a lower price below equilibrium. So, in such cases, what we can see is it creates an excess demand in the market. That means demand is more at point L in the diagram, and supply is less at point K. So, quantity Q2 and Q1, the gap between the two is the excess demand. So, in the market, producers will not supply that much quantity and buying and selling will be done till quantity OQ1 only. That means it will create a shortage in the economy. That commodity will be in shortage. Now, the another impact of this will be how producers will allocate this available supply. Means if the producer is having certain commodity, he can supply that in different way. Now it depends upon him that which method of allocating the commodity will he choose. He can choose like first come first serve basis, that means who will demand for the commodity first will get it first. Or what he can do is he can allocate according to his own preference. For example, he will decide who will get the scarce product. He may sell the commodity to the regular customers only. In many different ways we can see that commodities can be allocated. Now, one most often adopted method of this is rationing. Rationing means it is a system of distribution of a specified quantity of the product at the price fixed by the government. Now, what happens in this situation? Usually government issues a ration card or a coupon to each family who can buy the specified quantity of the product at that fixed price. For example, in India, BPL families and below poverty line families have their ration cards and they can purchase wheat, rice, etc. from fair price shops at the fixed price by the government. But there is a negative impact of that as well. Price ceiling can lead to black marketing. Why so? Because first of all, let me tell you what is a black market. Black market means a market in which goods and services are sold illegally at prices which are higher than the legally fixed price by the government. Now, price ceiling can give rise to this kind of market. Why so? This is because some consumers may be willing to pay a higher price to get extra quantity in order to get more quantity, because government fixes the quantity as well in ration cards. So in order to get more quantity, they are willing to pay higher price. And at the same time, producers are always ready to sell at higher price to gain more profit. And this cannot be done in a general market. It can only be done in a black market. So due to this shortage of quantity of the product in price ceiling method, we can ultimately reach to black market. So that is a negative impact of price ceiling policy. So what we need to do learn over here is what is price ceiling, what are its implications, whether price ceiling is to be done above equilibrium or below. So price ceiling definition I told you already, it is the maximum legal price which the supplier can charge for a particular commodity. In order to get it meaningful, it should always be below equilibrium price. And the negative impact are already I told you, shortage of the commodity and black marketing, problem in the allocation of this limited supply. These are few problems of this method. Let's move to the last subtopic of this chapter, that is minimum price legislation or floor price. As I told you, ceiling means the roof, floor means the bottom one. So flooring price means minimum price that can be charged by the seller for a particular commodity. Price ceiling was done for consumers' benefit, and price flooring is usually done for producers' benefit. In India, usually it is done for farmers. In order to give them incentive to produce more, government fixes the minimum price that can be charged. If no one charges, no one is willing to purchase at that price, usually government purchases. Let's discuss this. Here you can see that downward sloping demand curve and upward rising supply curve intersecting at point E, giving the equilibrium OP0 and OQ0. After that, whether it will be meaningful at a price above or below. Now, if the floor price is fixed at P1, that is below equilibrium, it will create excess demand. And since it is the minimum price that can be charged, producers are allowed to increase the price, and definitely they will increase it because excess demand leads to increase in price, and they will reach the equilibrium back. Now, it will be meaningful if it is done above equilibrium price. So when the price is fixed, floor price is fixed at P2, that is above equilibrium, in such cases it will be meaningful because the producers cannot charge below that, consumers cannot ask below that as well, and it will be beneficial for the producers to charge a higher price. Now what happens here is, since the price is high above equilibrium, producers are willing to sell more quantity at L, that is OQ2, but consumers are not willing to demand that, OQ1. So it creates an excess supply in the market. This excess supply is a problem again. Now, since there is an excess supply in the market, it will create problems for producers as well as government. First of all, price flooring causes an excess supply in the market, and as a result, some producers may find it difficult to sell their surplus quantity at the legal minimum price because there is less demand in the market. So, they may need to clear their unsold stock at a price below minimum fixed price by the government, and as a result, they will have to incur huge loss. If they are ready to sell the product at a lower price than the fixed price, they will definitely have loss. So that is a problem because of excess supply created due to this floor price. Now, not only producers but also government faces a problem. What kind of? Now, in order to maintain the minimum price, what government needs to do it, they have to purchase the surplus stock of the product which remains unsold at the minimum price from the producers. In Indian economy also we see that if the agricultural output remains unsold with the farmers, Indian government has to buy that at that particular fixed price so that producers will not face the loss condition, and government builds the buffer stock of the food grains. How? If government builds up the buffer stock of food grain in India by procuring surplus food grains from the farmers at the minimum support price. So that is again a problem for the government. So in case of implication of floor price, we can write it is only meaningful when it is done above equilibrium. More importantly, it creates an excess supply in the market. Producers may fail to sell the excess supply, and as a result, they may get a huge loss. At the same time, creation of buffer stock by the government is also an implication of this price legislation, which is floor price. So here we complete our chapter price mechanism. This is it for today, children, and we have completed demand, supply, elasticity of demand, elasticity of supply, and the price mechanism. So till now, a complete set of microeconomics is complete. It's done, it's discussed. Now it's your turn to go through the videos, write the notes in your copy which is given, at the same time solve the assignments. Some quizzes I have sent already, and with this chapter also I am sending an alternative quiz which you need to respond and send me back. You can get the result at the moment you submit your response. You will get the result because it is self-evaluating quiz. I have given the answers also over there. After submitting, you will get the answers as well. So do your best, all the best, stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you so much.